Sup bros, it's Terry, I'm a bull, and today I will be talking about an issue that came to the forefront of my mind during my last video on how to tell a dude bro from a douche bro, and it occurred to me when I was working on that and making the notes for it, that feminism has a predisposition to tell men how to be masculine, and they also seem to be trying to just redefine what masculinity is. I've thought about this before when listening to various different feminists and reading feminist stuff and watching all the different anti-SJW videos about feminism, but it didn't really click in my head until I was making that video. And bros, today I'm going to be talking about how, by their own rules, they have no authority to actually do that. You see, in feminism there's this concept called intersectionality. And I've looked up intersectionality before because I've come across it before in other things, and at the time that I looked at it, I actually kind of thought it was somewhat reasonable. But the more I've gotten involved in this and seen how they're using it now, it's fucking not bros. So, the basic definition of intersectionality, according to Google definitions, is the interconnected nature of social categorizations such as race, class, and gender as they apply to a given individual or group, regarded as creating an overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. Now, I'm not just going to go stick by the dictionary definition, I'm going to back this up with someone else's interpretation of it. So, when I was looking up different definitions of intersectionality, I found this article on Care2, which seems to be a website where you can support, make petitions, kind of like change.org, and donate to causes and stuff like that. I tried looking on everydayfeminism.com, but I gave up that pretty quickly because, oh, the cringe. Such cringe. So cringe. Wow. I just couldn't stay on that website too much. Plus, they didn't actually have an article basically defining the concept. They had a video with Lacey Green and Francesca Ramsey on it, but I did not have I didn't watch it. I might actually look at it in the future and do a response video to it, but after reading through all the I might just have to do a video on everydayfeminism.com just to show you bros. Just say no to everyday feminism, bros. Just say no. But this is Care2, which is much less mind-breaky, and this is what they had to say. Have you ever heard the term intersectionality and wondered what it means? Better yet, why is it important when we're discussing the discrimination that different groups of people face? If so, this post is for you. What is intersectionality? Intersectionality is a sociological theory about how an individual can face multiple threats of discrimination when their identities overlap a number of minority classes, such as race, gender, age, ethnicity, health, and other characteristics. For example, a woman of color may face sexism in the workplace, which is compounded by a subtle yet pervasive racism. Extending that example further, we know that trans... Bros, do you know if I'm supposed to pronounce the asterisk or not? Fuck it. Trans women of color face exceptionally high levels of discrimination and threats of violence. Looking through the lens of intersectionality, it may not be hard to see why. They face anti-trans prejudice, sexism and misogyny, and racism, and, due to the ignorance surrounding the trans identity, might also face homophobia too. While intersectionality is traditionally applied to women, it's not just women who are affected by the phenomena of overlapping minority status. A man from a Hispanic background could face xenophobia in today's America despite being a naturalized citizen, which in turn may be compounded by, for instance, a low economic status. If that Hispanic man is in his 50s, ageism might add to the discrimination he could face in trying to secure employment. More precisely, though, intersectionality describes the hierarchical nature of power and belonging to multiple discriminated classes, and can mean that one's issues are ignored. And then this article goes on to who came up with intersectionality and why, and the various different conflicts regarding whether or not it's valid. Also, when I was doing research into this, I found this very interesting article that I'm going to have to read later, and I might actually do a video on, called The Conversation That We Can't Have. Or something like The Conversations That We Can't Have. And it's a feminist discussing intersectionality. But bros, she comes so close to realizing that it's total bullshit, but she just hand waves it away as one of the first things she says is, society's just not ready for it yet. You know, I didn't read all of it, and like I said, I want to finish reading it later, but I had to do this, so. Anyway, that is what the definition of intersectionality is. Now, how it is actually used is to stifle conversation. For example, the basic example is, since a woman is oppressed, a man cannot comment on women's issues because they don't share that experience. And so, let's take the example that the Care 2 article did. A low-income Hispanic man in his 50s would not, according to intersectionality, would have more oppression than a low-income white person in his 50s. And so that white person, despite the fact that he shares, like, is very close in situation, cannot comment on that. And men cannot comment on women's issues. To simplify this further, and I'm going to just simplify it to 3 things, because intersectionality, there's so many different identity qualifiers. It's just how much baggage you want to pull behind you each time. I mean, like, seriously, imagine I'm plowing a field, and each part of my identity is a plow, or, no, imagine that I am pulling a cart, and imagine each part of my identity is one of those carts, and that thing in each identity is full of people who don't like me. That's what intersectionality wants you to think of. How oppressed are you? Now, that's a lot of baggage to carry around, and most people don't think about that. Not just white people, just people in general, genuinely. Most people do not. I mean, they're aware of bad things that happen in their life, but they don't just carry it around with them wherever they go and show up. It's basically a way of saying, this is how powerless I am, therefore I have the most power in this conversation. So let's say you're an XYZ person, where X is your race, Y is your sex, and Z is your sexuality. Now, you've just come across a WTF person, and so you have nothing in common with them, so by the rules of intersectionality, you cannot comment on anything about that person because they are oppressed in ways that are totally different than you, and you just can't understand. It's basically a genetics fallacy. That's basically what it is. And even if you, as an XYZ person, were to come across a WXY person, you still couldn't really talk about that person because you don't have the exact same experiences. And so, despite this fact that one's identity is sacrosanct and you can't possibly understand another identity because you haven't lived that identity, feminists think they can redefine masculinity, and bros, that's just wrong, to say the least. By their logic, they can't. By their own logic and precepts, they cannot. Even male feminists are not allowed to actually comment on it because their ideology is totally defined by women. I mean, just look at Steve Shives, for example. If you've seen any of the videos involving him and his wife, if he says something that is out of bounds, his wife will just passive-aggressively chastise him. And if he has the gall to reject that comment that she says, she'll just directly chastise him about it and say, oh, you're just sexist or something like that. I imagine that that's an extreme case, but at the same time, most male feminists, I mean, all the male feminists that I have seen or interacted with are in the submissive position and taking whatever the women feminists say and preaching it as gospel, essentially. So, male feminists' arguments are automatically invalid based off of the precepts of intersectional feminism. But, like I said, I do not accept those precepts, or tenets, or whatever you want to call them. Experience is a shared thing. People can empathize with people, and people have this thing called imagination, where they can imagine themselves in that other person's shoes. Now, not every single person is going to make the exact same decisions as the other person, but they can still understand where that person is coming from. Also, just the fact that someone can imagine different people will do different things given the same situation is also flies in the face of intersectionality, because intersectionality kind of defines people by their experiences and assumes that everyone will have the same opinion or make the same decisions given the same circumstance. But that's another video. There are people out there who are mentally unstable and who are totally unable to empathize with others, and an extreme form of this is called psychopathy, and that's rare. And of course there are people who choose not to empathize too, and among the SJW bros you will often find that they do not empathize with people who do not share their opinions. Now, there's some people in the anti-SJW crowd and normal people who choose not to empathize with others that they don't like, so this is a universal problem, but for the most part, people will empathize with other people on some level. I mean, there are people who will empathize with people who they don't like. I do my best to try and empathize with people I don't like all the time. It doesn't always work out for me, but I actually do try and be aware of my thoughts so I don't just get totally annoyed and enraged and try and understand where the person I'm talking to is coming from. There are toxic human behaviors in the world and that need to be dealt with. There are things that primarily men do that are bad, and there's things that primarily women do that are bad. And sometimes those bad things can be good things depending on the circumstance. Bros, context is everything. And redundancy is redundant, but context is everything in every context. If that makes sense, bros. But yeah, it's a total non-gendered issue. And to say that men are all bad because of these issues, well, there's things that are defined as toxic masculinity that women do also. And I plan on talking about a lot more of these issues in future videos. So, but there's some bros who show more feminine traits, and then there's also some broettes that show more masculine traits. And masculinity is somewhat defined by the culture a bro is living in. So this is a very complex issue, and it can't just be played up to a solid, unified view of what masculinity is. At the same time, I talked about this in my Dudebro video, how there's a big trend of feminists trying to say that being feminine is part of masculinity, and I'll put a link to that video in my description, and you can hear my whole diatribe about that. But seems to be a trend of feminists trying to redefine masculinity as needing to be more feminine, and I do not believe that's the case. Like I said, there are some bros who are more feminine and broettes who are more masculine. That's going to happen, and that's fine. There's no need for one end of the spectrum to be redefined as the other to make everyone feel inclusive. If someone wants to express themselves in a more masculine or feminine way based on, and contrary to their biological sex, that's fine. It's going to happen. I personally know, and it doesn't have to be, they don't have to be a different sexuality to do it either. I knew someone growing when I was a calf who was male, but he, from my perspective, exhibited a lot more feminine traits, and he wasn't gay, and he's grown up and gotten married, so do whatever floats your boat. Like I said, this is an entirely different... But my point with this is that men don't need to be more feminine to be considered non-toxic. Which, toxic masculinity is so ill-defined that it can literally refer to anything. Check out the Honey Badger Radio podcasts, Sexist Men Be Crazy, and Gay Male Misogyny if you want to hear more about that. They also have a bunch of other podcasts out there. I'll put links in the description. And yeah, bros, I will be talking about the concept of toxic masculinity and probably intersectionality in future videos. I've said this over and over again, bros, but it is a very complicated topic, and there are so many aspects to it. It's hard to fit everything in a video like this. And this has already gone on a bit longer than I want, so I'm gonna wrap it up for today, bros. Peace, love, Taurus